Cynthia does not find me entertaining at all.
Yeah, I do.
Hey,
I'm
pro
reading.
cow powwow. K-Pro Cow powwow wow. It's the K-Pro Cow powwow. Wow, wow. They want to find the treasure, they want to find it now. They are K-Pro and they are cow. They're going over it and over it and over it again. This treasure hunt created by Forrest Fenn. Sing it! K-Pro Cow powwow.
All right, welcome everybody. Thank you to Cynthia and Justin and K-Pro and myself. I'll thank myself. Why not? We're all here. It's Monday night. Coronavirus quarantine day 204. So let's talk about Forrest Fenn. What else do we have to do?
Exactly.
Coronavirus.
Exactly. Okay. So thank you for Justin and Cynthia for coming on. How's everybody doing in the chat? K-Pro, how are you?
I'm great. And those of you that didn't know, that thumbnail is when I took my Forrest Fenn coin, medallion, whatever you want to call it, and I did the Great Wall of China, and I took it to the top, and I took pictures from the top, and it's true. It's there. There you have it. There it is.
Pretty cool picture. Yeah, I figure it was apropos for boots on the ground. You took it to the Great Wall of China.
I did. And I was not able to get a connection at the top. And when I hit the bottom, I sent it to Forrest and said, here you go. Your coin's now been everywhere. You've been to the Great Wall. And he's like, oh my.
Forrest, let me send this to him. Cynthia, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Justin, everything good?
Doing great. Thanks.
All right. All right. K-Pro, take it away. Let me send this to Forrest real quick.
Okay, so tonight we thought that it would be interesting because we had two great searchers come on the marathon and people wanted to hear more. And so we kicked around some ideas and we thought, why don't we talk about, so I think Justin's around 700, Cynthia, maybe at least hundreds, 300, 400 days boots on the ground. I mean, Mike and I, we're a solid 10 between us. So we bring out a great panel of four searchers. Two of them will lead the show about when do you go boots on the ground? And then when do you rule out boots on the ground, a location? And especially since you both have been so many times, I think it's a whole different ball game than some of us that have only been out a couple of days or once a year, twice a year. Because when you're ruling it out, I'm thinking, well, I don't even want to try to pretend to know. So that's where we're going to start. I will ask the room a couple things. One, smash the like button just because Justin and Cynthia are here. Subscribe, please. And then also hit @KPro if you want a question to go. And then, of course, super chat. But @KPro if you would like me to ask them any questions. We're going to let them talk for a little while, get this kicked off, and then we're going to definitely take questions from the room. So
and a quick audio check. We did have some issues yesterday. I went live this afternoon. I think I got them rectified. JK Pioneer says the sound is perfect. Okay, so that's good. For everybody who does hit the like button.
Thank you for that.
Okay. All right. What was the first question, K-Pro? I know there's a couple things we want to cover. So what's the first thing we want to hear?
yeah, so I don't know if we want to start with, because it sounds like the wind blows a certain way and you guys are boots on the ground. So I don't think there's a large criteria maybe for getting out there. But well, you've been out so many times. I think your boots on the.
Well, for some people that may not know Cynthia or may not know Justin, they should know both by now. But just in case they don't, give a brief introduction and focus on how many boots on the ground you've been on in how many states. Let's start there. So, Cynthia.
My name is Cynthia Meacham. I've been doing this since the beginning of 2013, and I have not actually done 300 boots on the ground. I have done probably around 150 or whatever. But everyone was a good.
Let's define that because Justin defined it a little different. How many days boots on the ground do you believe you have been?
That's what I mean. I'm counting my days. If I'm out there a day or a partial day, to me, that one day is one boots on the ground.
But if you're out there for 3 days in the same spot, is that considered 3 boots on the ground?
To me, it is. That's 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's not always, maybe I parked somewhere else, or maybe I actually walked slightly different. I mean, it could be the same search location, but yeah, I count it per day.
Okay, well then that shows you a little bit how much Justin's been out because he's in the 700 club. Justin, to you.
Yeah. I'm Justin Posey. I live outside of Austin, Texas here. And Yeah, I pretty much spend the vast majority of late spring through early fall. By my best estimates, it's about 120 days a year searching. And that's not every year. It's actually just in the later years, the crazier I become. Early on it was, much fewer, but it's a slippery slope. And really for me, it's just kind of a lifestyle. I enjoy the outdoors, and I try and find every excuse I can get out there, and I'd be out there either way. So for me, it's a great complement to what I'd already be doing. So yeah, and the way that I categorize boots on the ground is similar to Cynthia, and that is just days that I spend searching. And it's not like I'm there sun up to sundown. I still have a day job. So I'm either searching during the week, I'm searching in the mornings, or late afternoons and early evenings, and then just on weekends and holidays and that sort of thing as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So, and I joke a little bit about you guys. So you're already headed out, but when do you go to a location? Do you define a criteria of it needs to be a full solve down to a 12 by 12, everything defined, or does it matter? So for you to get that itch to get out there, you're going out there anyway, but to get to a location, what does that look like for you? Let's start there, and then we're going to, the crux of it, or the meat and potatoes, is how do you roll an area out? But let's start with, when do you go out?
Yeah, Cynthia, you want to go ahead?
No, you go.
Okay. I tend to oscillate between two different philosophies, and that is, if I get a solid first two clues, then look, it's worth checking out. But then the other part of me says, you know what, I have reason to believe that there might be a little bit more confidence involved if you can actually kind of look ahead in the clues and come up with what I consider a more holistic or complete solution. And so I oscillate between those. Some years I'm more very basic. If I've got a warm waters halt that I'm excited about, and there happens to be a canyon in the vicinity that looks promising, I'll just go check it out. But other years, it's more like I want something very complete, and that is something that takes all the clues into consideration before I go out and about. And really what happens over time is that I kind of come up with my short list, and those are areas that I find myself returning to time and again. And for the other areas, it's fine. I've just found a place where the chest is not, and I'm okay with that too.
Okay. What about you? So basically first two clues, which did you define, or maybe you have before, do you have a definition of what WWWH is to you? Is it a warm water feature? Is it not water at all? Do you discuss that? Or if you were to generally say what your WWWH is, do you have a general criteria that you use?
Was that a question for me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm pretty straightforward in that regard. I consider it water that you could dip your toe into, not necessarily like temperature warm, but maybe some sort of analogy or synonym for warm.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
Okay.
You always had that same criteria, or has it evolved over the years, what the warm waters is that we're looking for?
Oh, I've had some crazy ones, don't get me wrong, but these days I try and stick to the basics. I consider where warm water salt to be a place where, either it's like, an analogy or synonym might be welcome waters, or that might be physically warm, just very basic stuff like that.
So Cynthia, we've already been asked, what does your shirt say? Because all they can see is the really, really, really part.
Loves K-Pro is what the bottom says.
Wyoming.
Which we all know is where the
I wish you weren't a liar.
Okay. All right. So Cynthia, for you now, Justin sounds like he goes on vacation in our 4 search state area. So he's going whether he likes, that's kind of his vacation. It sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to go whether you have a solution or not. Cynthia, would you be going up all over New Mexico and up by in Wyoming and Montana if it wasn't for the forest fen hunt? Would you be out there anyway? Or is this just all treasure hunting related? You want to find that chest?
No, the way I started when I was searching in New Mexico for the first 5 years, it was totally like Justin described for himself. For me, I was going to be out in the mountains anyway, and hiking in the mountains of New Mexico. I mean, I backpacked a lot before I ever heard of forest fen. So So I still would have been out there. And then I think Justin and I agree on about having the first solid solutions for the first two clues. And I have also evolved, like he has mentioned, in that when I was just driving there for the day, they could be the stupidest, it could be the dumbest things for WWH. I mean, I have used everything that I could possibly think of. Metaphors, which we talked before about tears, water gaps. I mean, just everything I could possibly think of. Okay, so that's cool when I wasn't spending much money. So then over the last couple of years, my solutions had to really evolve. And for me to go to Wyoming and Montana to search, now I went for more like a week or 10 days at a time. So once I was there, for multiple days. But I had to feel that I had a really solid WWH, and for me, always a canyon. There are always, even in New Mexico, there always had to be an actual canyon right there as well.
Well, so what I heard was when you were in New Mexico, you could use stupid WWHs like tears. And now you have refined to the appropriate and accurate definition of WWH. The house, Carter, you're in the room. Did you hear that? I'm just saying. I just summarized what Cynthia said.
Let's use alternate theories, alternate opinions.
Okay. So if you have the first two clues, which you believe are WWH and Canyon, it's worth checking out. And I'm going to go a little bit different than what Mike said. Cowlazars said Justin's on vacation. I heard he is out working. He just spends part of his day boots on the ground. Okay, he's shaking his head. You see,
it's more like a lifestyle. It's not an extended vacation by any means. Certainly still working.
So you're both outdoors people, regardless of this crazy treasure hunt we all got involved in. You would be out there anyway. So this just fits perfectly in with what you guys were doing anyway. So, okay. Makes sense.
So then let's transition. So you get out there, you're moving your way through the clues, because we know there's 9. So you've got the first 2, you're working your way through them. When do you rule them out? And what does that look like? Is that a multi-day process? Maybe you get the first 2 and you go, oh, this is kind of cool. Then at night, do you go and look at some maps and things? Have you already done that? Do you have several teed up? And then there was a question of the room is, how often have you been to your favorite or strongest solve? And how many days do you usually go before you rule something out? So there's lots to unpack there. So I throw out 4 or 5 things, see where we go.
Yeah, Cynthia, you want to kick us off there?
No, I want you to.
She's going to do that a lot.
You always go first tonight, Justin.
Oh boy. Okay. So a couple questions there. Yeah. In terms of like ruling something out, it really depends. Like there are a lot of things, in terms of my criteria that can help rule something out. If I get there and the access rights are not what I believed it to be, that's a pretty quick way to rule something out. If I'm not supposed to be there, I'm not going to do it.
So you do not trespass, is that correct?
No, I don't trespass. Again, I think there are exceptions to that, like we had discussed last time on the show, and that is around a sign that was clearly private property, but also didn't forbid someone from entering. So
did you remember that one, Mike? I was amazed by that. It's enter at your own risk. So it's not trespassing, it's an enter at your own risk. So it releases them from liability. I thought that was fascinating. In certain states, that's enough.
I wonder how many people out there in the chat have seen a enter at your own risk while they're out there boots on the ground. Just put a yes. Yeah.
I mean, in my experience, it's pretty rare to come across a sign like that. It's actually only happened to me probably 2 or 3 times that I can recall. So that's always actually kind of a bonus to me. It kind of means that, to me, I interpret it as, okay, it is private property. I'm still allowed to tread on the property, and the person who owns the property is trying to protect themselves in some legal way. If I step over a stump and break my neck or something and try and sue them, for instance. So I kind of like that concept. But anyhow, in terms of ruling things out, it really kind of depends on the solution I'm going for. If it's a very basic, I got a warm water salt, I got a canyon, and I just try and step through very logically, one at a time, and see where it leads me. And if things don't pan out, I'll definitely reevaluate that night and kind of review resources, look at it critically, and just try and figure out what I'm missing. And sometimes that involves just capturing video footage along the way and reviewing it in the evening to see if there's something I might have missed, or maybe a different way that I can interpret it now that I've actually been there and seen the sites and have a little bit more context. But if the type of solve is more like a holistic solution, I'm putting an X on the map, and it's very exact. And so, yes, I'm still going through the clues in order to reach that spot, but it's very specific. And when I get there, it's either there or it isn't. And those are kind of a different category of a solution. You know, there's two categories that I fall into anyway.
Well, so let me ask a follow-up. If you have a couple of different, I'm assuming, and this might be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, you're heading out to, state that you don't live in. So you're going to Wyoming. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. We can do it when you're done.
So how many solves do you have teed up in an average trip? And then, like you said, you can rule one out real quick, and then maybe you head to the next spot, or maybe how long have you spent in maybe a favorite spot? Is it been a week, a month, a year? How long? I mean, I have no idea.
Yeah, no, that's a good question.
I don't know.
For me, like, my trip is very extended. I start in May and I don't end until September. And so I spend all winter coming up with a laundry list, a long list of potential solutions. And I need enough to keep me occupied all summer. So it can be a long list. With that being said, the number of items that I check off that list vary wildly each year. I mean, there have been some years where I've only been to one or two spots and I spend the whole summer there. But that's kind of rare. I'm what you call a fickle searcher. When I get fed up with an area or a bit frustrated, I just want to change the scenery. And so I'll try something that's on my alternate list. And it's nice just because I kind of follow the weather to a certain degree, and also a constant change of scenery just keeps things fresh and gives me a bit new perspective, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So Cynthia, what do you think about all of this? What do you rule out? How many times do you go to a spot? I mean, now that it's not in your backyard that you can make a day trip, when you go up north, do you have more than one solve you're looking at? Do you rule it out? Is it gone forever? What does that look like to you?
Well, it all depends on the solution to the poem, and then when I get there, what I see. And I totally agree with Justin, what he was saying about, sometimes you can look at your stuff on Google Earth or Google Maps, and you can have all your topo maps or whatever. But until you arrive there that first time, you don't really know what it looks like. And I have been to places in New Mexico where I got out of the car and I started on the trail, and it's like, oh, this place sucks. I mean, there was a creek there and everything, and that was like overgrown and just nothing attractive about it. And it wasn't desert. I mean, I was definitely in the, I think this was like in the Santa Fe National Forest, I believe. And there were areas around it as I was driving in that were gorgeous. But then I actually got to where I parked and started, and it's like, oh, this is bad. I mean, I didn't go far, and it's like, this is not it. And I turned around and just scratched that one off. And then I get to other ones, and I'm going to talk a lot tonight about Sunlight Basin and Sunlight Creek, unless Justin tells me not to.
No, it's all good.
Are you okay
All
with
good.
that? If I
Of
give a
course.
lot of detail about that?
Yeah,
Because
it's fine.
that is, other than places inside Yellowstone National Park, it is by far the most gorgeous place I've ever searched. And so, I mean, and because Justin and I know Forrest has been there, and
What?
this is basically no, wait, let me go back just to clarify. I mean, this is, so when Forrest wrote the scrapbook about George Dobbitch and going out to Skylight Country, and they went out and they looked for the buffalo horn tips, I think he called them. That's where Dobbitch supposedly gave his brown hat to Forrest and told him to keep it, and said, like, I want you to have this, it fits you like a glass fits water or whatever. It's in the scrapbook.
And what
So,
state is in this area?
This is in Wyoming. So this is between Cody. This is northwest of Cody.
Okay, so we did get a super chat, and this is for both of you. Doug, thank you for the super chat. But he wanted you, if you want to,
Hey, Doug.
the 4 states, most likely to least likely, where you think it is. Since you guys have searched in all 4 states, you've been in all 4, right, Cynthia?
Now, I've never searched Colorado. I've been there to hike, but I've never searched it.
Nobody goes to Colorado. Well, Justin, have you been to Colorado?
Yeah.
So if you guys want to kind of number one state on your list to the fourth state on your list.
For me, personally, this is just my opinion. I have nothing to base this on other than my, for lack of a better word, gut feeling. It's a toss-up between Montana and Wyoming for first choice, and second choice would be New Mexico, and last would be Colorado.
And Cynthia?
For me, for sure, first state, Wyoming. And that includes Yellowstone National Park, although I am no longer actively searching inside Yellowstone National Park. I go there and I hike. So for me, it's Wyoming, Montana, and absolutely never Colorado, and no longer New Mexico. I won't even consider those two anymore. For me, that's just me.
So when you guys go search and you've kind of crossed it off, it didn't pan out for whatever reason. Have you ever gone back? Have you ever gone back home, re-looked at it and said, oh, I have to go back? Or once you're done with the spot, you're done?
A couple times for me. Yeah. I mean, and that's really a function of viewing video footage that I took. Every now and then I'll pull something up and just review it. Depending on the area, sometimes they allow drones. And I just zip a little drone through there and get some overhead footage and stuff just to kind of document the area. And every now and then something will catch my eye. I'll be like, you know what, that's worth another look. So I'll, oftentimes it's en route where I'm going somewhere else, but I'll stop in and just check it out just to be certain. Yeah.
Cynthia, have you gone back? I know you say you won't go back to New Mexico, but if something were to happen that would make you change your mind, would you revisit some of the old spots?
No, I thought my Santa Cruz Lake area was a real good solution to the poem. And so I think I went there 15 different days, not consecutive days, but until I admitted defeat there, I went back and I looked everywhere in that area. So if I think it's a good spot, I'll keep going back. But once I'm done with it, I'm done with it. I'll never go back there, not to search.
Okay,
Yeah,
a
that's
couple of
fair.
things. One, I wanted to say happy birthday to William, who makes me smile and actually just laugh and blush a little bit more than Cynthia does. So he's in the room. So I wanted to say William Ortiz, he's wonderful. He's funny. It is his birthday. So I wanted to give him a shout out.
Happy birthday.
Just look at you.
Happy birthday, William.
Okay, so I call it the love solve. So my first solve was Ojo Caliente, a certain spot where you could see mystic waterfalls, you could see a geyser, you could see the fishermen. And I'm like, this is it. And I know now it's not it, but it's the solve that I go back to. And I'm like, if I were to ever hide a treasure chest, now I can't, because I'm telling everybody, I'm like, this is the best place on earth for me. It's my favorite spot. I took Mike almost to that spot. I took him near Ojo Caliente just to show him the beauty. I've been many other spots now. I've had 5 other solves. It's the one that I'm like, my favorite. So if I were to ever do a trip, do you have that one that, like, you've been out hundreds of times, but it's like the one, it's like, Forrest, why didn't you put it here? Because this is my favorite.
That's about right.
You have that, Justin? Do you know what
Oh,
I'm talking
definitely. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe other folks feel the same, but for me, this is a big puzzle. It's a big game, and there's an awesome community behind it. And for me personally, it's not really about cashing in on some big prize here. Like I would actually rehide it again. Some people think I'm nuts, but I would. And I already have a spot picked out, and I've known about that spot for some time. And yeah, I mean, it's like but in terms of the chase, like I think there are certain spots that jump out, and it's just so poetic, and everything just falls into place so beautifully that how could it not be here? And, the more solutions that you look at and you go and explore, the rarer that really becomes. And so those are real gems when you get that and you go there, and not only does it, it pan out, but it just reaffirms time after time how perfect it is. And you'll notice all these illusions. Of course, if you look hard enough, you'll find hints everywhere. But, when you think of that, you got that context and you read the book again, I mean, stuff just starts screaming at you, to the point where it's like, how could this not be the place? And those are the types of places that I find myself going back to time and again.
Cynthia, do you have your love solve? Love solve?
I don't know if I do anymore. It all depends on where I'm driving through at the moment, I guess. I mean, you know, the first time you see something like the first time I saw Sunlight Basin and then over to Sulphur Lake, and it's not remote, but it is so isolated. No one can see you over there from Sunlight Creek, even if they're fishing or whatever. I mean, yeah, I just totally fell in love with that. But then the more I went back, then you get more used to it, and then not so much. So I don't think, I mean, I just have seen so many gorgeous places. I don't think I have one.
Okay. See, I thought it was when you took a special searcher with Molly, somebody dipped her toe, actually jumped right into one of the little baiting spots. That was like a fun day. And then we went off-roading and there was a little puddle of water and Cynthia almost died thinking she was off-roading. That was actually one of my most fun. I don't call it boots on the ground, but we kind of did at the time, or recon or whatever. That was a fun day. And it was one of your old solves. So
Right.
So is there one that you have as your strongest solve right now that you've been to the most times? Like the one, maybe the one you can't let go, or maybe the one you're actively, like, how many days have you been to your strongest solve or your favorite solve? How many days?
For me, I've spent months there, like day after day.
Oh,
I have a short list, you know, and my short list right now is probably 4 different places, 2 of which are in Montana and 2 of which are in Wyoming. And actually, Sunlight Basin is phenomenal, by the way. I mean, I think, you know, I posted about that back in 2014, and I recall saying just how incredibly beautiful that area is, and it's one of the most beautiful areas I've ever seen. So I think it's a high contender. I mean, I applaud Cynthia for jumping in, and I hope she finds something I couldn't. I really do.
so
But
it's
yeah,
not,
I mean, I've got a short list. Yeah.
but you have a place that you spent months. Why can't you rule it out?
It's just one of those areas where things just line up to the point where almost to the point of absurdity, and I can't get away from it. You know, just it is what it is.
All right. Interesting. Wonder if we could do our fishing trip there if we ever make that happen this summer or in that general area. Have either one of you considered the possibility that you've been to the correct Warm Waters Halt on one of your many expeditions, and you just couldn't figure the rest of the clues out at that time, but that you were there at the right place?
You know, Cynthia, I don't know if maybe you feel the same, but for me, these first 2 clues can't be that hard. You know, I mean, people are arriving there by mistake and they don't understand the significance of where they're at. People continue to get the first 2 clues correct. So it's not that hard. And of all the places I've been, yeah, I probably was at the starting location, and me, like everyone else, is just unable to put 2 and 2 together and move forward from there. There's some sort of mental gap between or beyond those first 2 clues where folks aren't able to adapt in some fashion. And I'm sure I fall into that category as well. I don't know. What do you think, Cynthia?
Well, I sure hope you were one of them that was within 200 feet. And I hope it was Sunlight Basin because I am not. Well, when I say Sunlight Basin, that's just the first area that you drive into as you go back along the creek and then back into the canyon, which dead ends. I mean, it's one way in. There's only one way in. So, but the problem with that area, or the good part about it, is that there are other creeks that come down through the draws or whatever that come down, you know, from the snow melt. And there's a lot of creeks that come down. So therefore they all have, I wouldn't call most of them a canyon. I do consider Little Sunlight and Little Sulphur where they, at their confluence back along, I think it's Little Bald Ridge. To me, I would consider that a canyon. So what has taken me so long and why I will continue to go back there again in 2020 is I want to more thoroughly search that side canyon. And so Justin, you're saying that you think the first clue is easy or not that difficult. And I am just the opposite. I think that because Fenn said, and I have this quote here from 2014, which is a real famous quote on Mysterious Writings, where he says, searchers have routinely revealed where they think the treasure was hidden. Walk me through the process, blah, blah, blah. That's how I know a few have identified the first 2 clues. Although others were at the starting point, I think their arrival was an aberration and they were oblivious to its connection to the poem. I think that's where 99.99% of the searchers are. There is something about that WWH that so in other words, I don't make any bones about it, that I think it's going to be some kind of a geothermal water feature, whether it's a spring. I don't know. I don't know what else it can be other than a spring, but I won't rule out some other choice. And back in the basin, there are these thermal areas. So the reason I'm so stuck on some, well, not some, I think Little Sunlight, well, Gravel Bar is a canyon that goes back through there too. So there's a few other canyons you could actually branch off from Sunlight Basin and Sunlight Canyon and go back and check out. And for me, what if this WWH that most people, they arrive, there, but they can't understand the significance of it. That is what I need to go back and see in 2020. I have to go back and really, really look at well, I just named Gravel Bar and Little Sunlight. So, so when you get into an area that is fairly big, I mean, I would kill myself if I give up on this right now and then I, do a whole new solve, go somewhere else in Wyoming, and someone finds it there.
Yeah,
would
I've
be
always said that too. If someone found it in an area that I hadn't considered, great. I couldn't figure it out. It is what it is. But if I walked right over the top of that thing, I tell you.
Walk right back to the other
I did want to mention something. You mentioned earlier around the first couple of clues being challenging. The quotes that come to my mind is especially as early as 2013, where someone asked, this was at the Collected Works bookstore event in I think October of 2013, and someone had asked Forrest how many clues have been cracked, and he said, I know they've cracked the first two and went right past the treasure chest. He said several people have done that, and I don't know if he means several people just walked past it or several people figured out the first two clues. But if you look at the Moby Dickens bookstore event in November of that same year, he said there are several people that have deciphered the first two clues. And those are the types of things that make me think that maybe it's a little easier than we think it is, at least in the beginning. I know he says that the first clue is the hardest, but if you look at that in the grand scheme of things, of course it is. It's the full Rocky Mountain range in those states. So pinpointing a warm water salt that fits is a challenge. I can definitely relate to that.
So Cynthia, just because people are asking, you've explained this before, can you put to rest why you believe you are not the 200-foot searcher? Some people are saying, when did you go to Sunlight Basin and when did Forrest talk about the 200-foot searcher? They're trying to figure if it was you or not.
No, it was Justin. People need to go back and read Justin's write-up about Sunlight Basin on Homadale back in, did you post this in 2014?
Yeah, that was 2014.
So, he beat me there my first time there was last year. So he beat me there by 4 years.
Well, I'm curious. I mean, how did you come across Sunlight? Was it just a search on the blogs, or was it something you had in mind that kind of was more concreted by what I wrote up, or how did you get to that solution?
I actually read the book, and through the book, I got Skylight Country. Through Skylight Country, I believe I did a search on Dales for Skylight. Does that sound right?
Book with the skylight in the bathroom. Is that where you're going with that?
And then, if you didn't use the word skylight there,
I don't think I did. No.
If you didn't use skylight there, then I did a search for Sunlight.
Must have been
Because I mean,
Sunlight.
before I did it, I actually had my WWH in the canyon, and then I couldn't come up with some of the other my other solutions, so I did a search, and it came up, and it's like, holy hell, I'll use that, and it was the Homer
awesome.
Brown. That's the one that, and then after I got your Homer Brown, it's like, and then I researched it, and it's like, oh my God. I mean, I never published all the details to my solution last year, but I mean, there's just so much there's just so much that lined up.
Did your Homer Brown, is that the same thing that I had decided as well?
Yes, I think I refined it slightly, but it was the same
Huh.
It was the same area, but I refined it a little bit.
Because you have so many boots on the ground. I'm assuming before you head out, you get a viable where warm waters halt and a viable canyon. So when you're there, boots on the ground, and you're looking for a home of brown, what are you looking for? Is there something in your mind? Is it brown looking? Is it, in other words, what could the home of brown be? What have you guys look for when you're out there?
Why don't you try that one, Cynthia?
I have done everything imaginable over the last 7 years. Normally anymore, because I try to refine the solution so much before I go. I actually now have Homer Browns before I get there.
So it's something on a map, something you found on Homer Brown?
Yeah, sort of. Justin, do you care if I talk about the ranch, the name of the ranch?
It's on the internet.
I know,
totally
but it's
fine.
not easy to find.
I guess a ranch would be a home, wouldn't it? Yeah.
No, so it's the Salinger Ranch, and this is all because of Catcher in the Rye and J.D. Salinger, and how much he talked about Salinger. And then the working title to TTOTC was the Rye sequel. Forrest Fenn just friggin' loved J.D. Salinger and Catcher in the Rye. And
So
people have done YouTube.
Ranch there. This is the actual Salinger family, or is it
Oh,
just?
no, it's not actually. It's not the actual J.D. Salinger Ranch.
Okay.
So, but there was, unless Justin knows something more than I do. But so I think after I read it on his story, then I really started to research it. And then if you just ignored that, there was still so much other stuff that fell into place. So that was my HOB. And I actually had other duplicate HOBs for Strawberry Gulch, which comes right down there. My Omega water crossing was right there. I just had so much right there.
But how does that relate to Brown, the Salinger Ranch?
Oh, go ahead, Dustin.
Oh no,
Yeah,
I was
Dustin.
just gonna.
And I'm not drinking.
You were
I'm gonna
close
call you
enough.
Dustin unless you give me better clues.
Justin is his real name.
Justin?
We're going by Justin tonight.
No, his nickname with me is Dustin. It's a secret.
That works. No, for the Homer Brown, the way that tied in, and I've mentioned this to a lot of folks who found it exceedingly obscure to the point that they thought it was ridiculous. So it may very well be. But my interpretation at the time was, the historic Salinger Ranch that's there. If you know the Catcher in the Rye, it was published by Little Brown and Company, and that's actually a prominent publisher that's responsible for most of the classic literature for the past 2 centuries. And so I felt like there was some symbolism, in effect there, where the ranch is the home and it's Salinger's Ranch, which equates to Brown. But yeah, it's obscure. From my perspective, Brown is going to be something that's either exceedingly common or very obscure, because, if you take the very straightforward approach and you can only get the first 2 clues as opposed to a holistic solution, you really can't see Brown on the map if you think that the first 2 clues are warm waters halt and take it in the canyon down. So with that in mind, it's going to be something that's like maybe geologic or geographic, just that you can only see in person, or something that's just very, very common that you wouldn't think twice of unless you put it into context. That's just my opinion. Of course, like, it is capitalized, so you have to consider the proper place being.
So I want to expound on something real quick before I forget. While we're talking about Salinger and Little Brown and Company. So one of the things where I just about had a heart attack for a good reason, when I was researching this over the winter time before I actually went boots on the ground, and I was finding stuff a little bit at a time. So what Justin didn't say is there's Little Sunlight Campground is right there in line with the Omega Crossing right there at the Salinger Ranch, which can be Brown, and Company Creek is right there. So you have Little Brown Company, and I'm telling you, it is all right there on a line, so close together, and it crossed right over. It took me right to Sulphur Lake and my heavy loads and water high.
Now, do both of you have any plans to go back to that location this summer?
I am. I'll spend
I was gonna
2020
say,
there.
Mike, you're going with Cynthia. What do you mean?
Yes, Mike, we are. Remember, Mike, we are going there this summer.
I'm ready to check it out. It sounds interesting. So
It's a
everybody give a
beautiful
thumbs up if
place.
you've never heard of Sunlight Basin before, because now you have something to research. But I do want to say, any Aliante give a shout out to Billy and Kelly. So Billy and Kelly, thank you for tuning in to the broadcast tonight. We do appreciate it.
Okay. And some people thought when I said at the beginning, put at KPro, I have a list of questions, and I have been,
See the flip sides comment?
I'm trying to put a couple of comments in here. One, and I think the most unique question that we have, talk a little bit more about what we call the bronze dog in chat.
Tucker, the secret weapon. Yeah.
This is so interesting. And do you think, has he ever actually found out boots on the ground? Like bronze? I mean,
anything.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of work, and it's been a highly experimental process, but I think it's going well. And, it's to the point where, he knows what he's doing. And, he's got a special command. It's the find it command. And he loves it. He's super excited out in the field, and he'll turn over every stone in the county if you let him. So it was a long, arduous process, but that's actually one of the reasons there are some areas that I can rule out definitively, is because, unless it's buried insanely deep, like 10 feet plus, if I can run Tucker through there and he doesn't turn up anything, I have a lot of confidence that it's not there.
But one of the questions was, how close does he have to be to alert on bronze? Does he have to be right on top of it if it's buried, or is there several feet away he would go toward it?
Yeah, there's several variables, so that you have to take the wind into account, and the depth of the object, and the ferrous metal in the surrounding area. So it's sort of like a metal detector where it has a discrimination feature. Tucker has a built-in discrimination feature, but it also affects the breadth of his search area where he can pick up a scent. So if the wind's blowing against him, in the wrong direction, that's a big problem. If it's blowing towards us, where we're headed anyway, that's wonderful, because he can it's basically a look ahead for him. And if it's a really highly mineralized area, he has a little bit more trouble. So, it really is kind of dependent. But I can bury stuff pretty deep, and you do just fine. So I'm not terribly concerned about the depth, and I really don't think that it's buried deep at all, if at all. But he does pretty good.
That's awesome. And do you always take him out to all boots on the, is he your search partner? Kind of like, I felt like Molly until the end, but Molly was like, there's Cynthia, there's Molly, there's Cynthia. How was it with, is he always with you?
Oh yeah. That's his thing. This dog, all winter long, he just sits there and waits, and he knows it's coming. And as soon as I start packing up the truck and kind of getting things organized, he knows what's going on, and he's just waiting very patiently until he just can't take it anymore. And actually, while I'm packing up the truck in the days before, he'll just wait in the truck all day. He'll just kind of sit there and watch me pack and everything. He's ready to go, And so he's always with me unless there's something that doesn't allow it. And that would be something like legalities, like at a national park. Or if it's a really treacherous area, I'm a little nervous at times where I'll keep him behind. Or that's probably a hint that I shouldn't be there, huh? If it's a really highly concentrated grizzly area, sometimes I'll leave him behind. I've had a couple incidents over the years, so I'm pretty careful about that too.
So Cynthia, I know you always traveled with your dog before, unfortunately, he passed away, right? Do you have plans to get a new dog for the new search season, or no?
No, because it restricts me from where I can go. So because when I go, I always take at least a couple days, and I go into Yellowstone National Park, and generally I hike there. And so a dog is not allowed on any trails.
Well, and I'm going to I stayed with Cynthia as we were preparing for our little mini boots on the ground. And I will say, first she prepared the breakfast, then started preparing, and she knew she was starting to go around, and it was a whole little routine I felt. And I was like, I'm going to be here for it. And then we went out, and I felt like 5 feet taller, and I'm already pretty tall. I was like, I feel totally safe with this big dog with me, DAWG dog. It was awesome. That was like highlight. And she had her own little backpack and all of that. It was super fun. So thank you for letting me be a part of that, because that was.
The flip side pointed something out about Homer Brown in Sunlight Basin, which maybe you two both know and maybe don't. He says Riddle Ranch a daughter of the owner married a man with the last name of Brown, and they were rangers at the ranger cabin there in Sunlight Basin. So basically, the ranger has the last name of Brown in that area. Is that correct?
Yeah, don't you rent out that cabin? Cynthia?
Yeah, I have reservations for that cabin the end of May. We'll see if I get to go or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you think the reason that Forrest said leave your search partner in the car is both of you guys travel with your dogs, and it's a place that dogs are not allowed.
A subtle hint right to Cynthia. Leave your search partner.
No,
Yellowstone, obviously.
I don't think that was what he meant at all. It's just, it was the favorite interpretation after it came out. And I think that just got real blown out of proportion. I'm pretty sure that's not what he meant.
How far is the Sunlight Basin driving wise from Cody? Let's say from the museum or in that area. I mean, are we talking an hour, 2 hours?
I know it's exactly 54 miles from the red light there at the Cody Museum, because that's also in a scrapbook.
I was gonna say, I'm now confident you two are not search partners. My God, I knew that answer.
This is all new to me. Although we talked about sulfur, I think a little bit while we were over your place, Cynthia. But yeah, I'm excited to go check it out.
It's a cool area, you know, and it's Chief Joseph Scenic Byway. The whole area is just phenomenal, especially with the Clark Fork there and how it segues into the mountains with, you know, Index Peak in the background. It's just, it's pretty breathtaking, especially if you get pretty deep in there. But yeah, this summer, I'm sure I'll be passing through there and poking around at some point. So maybe I'll bump into you
A few
guys.
more questions. Do either of you feel that you know who the closest 200 footer was, and that was a part of how you solved things? That came from the room. Gosh, I'm sorry, like 40 minutes ago.
It's tough to say. Yeah. What do you think, Cynthia?
No, I only, after meeting you and talking to you at the World Series of Finn, did I then think that you were not the original 200 footer, because you didn't start, I don't think, in 2011 or 12. I think the original one that was discussed before, Christy, on your show, where Finn said it wasn't a real searcher, it was just someone that knew him that was within 200 feet. Since I think that was the original 200 footer. And then Justin even talked about a quote tonight where Fenn said, you know, several searchers have identified the first two clues. And I believe you said that was in the 2013 interview. So I think that's two separate parties of people being within 200 feet. And once I met Justin, I thought he was one of the 200 footers, not the original, but a later one. And I don't know.
I don't know about that. That's wishful thinking, but I appreciate the confidence.
Okay, so do you know of Old Ghost Town in Sunlight Basin?
Yes, Lee City. Is that what they're asking about?
I don't know. I'm just reading chat comments because people are getting, when you put them 4 or 5 times, I will continue to, I have a list.
It's on the way to Copper Lakes. Yeah, it's between Salinger Ranch and Copper Lakes. Yeah.
So how far do you have a general consensus on your solves of WWWH to the treasure chest? What that distance is?
I feel like that's kind of a trick question. You probably won't like the answer, but it depends. And if it's this holistic solve that I mentioned earlier, then I don't think that they're very close at all. But if it's
a general, when you say at all, mile, 100 miles, or somewhere in between, is there like
I'd say between at least 50 miles, if not more. And the reason I say that is because, at some point Forrest had mentioned that the person, and I'm paraphrasing here, the person that finds the treasure is probably the person that's best able to adapt. And so it begs the question, adapt to what? And the best that I can come up with is that at some point you need to transition from looking at a map to being there. And the question is, where does that transition occur? If you look at the clues, he says you need to follow them in order. That's fine. And he says this girl in India can't go beyond the first 2 clues. But I still think there could be a concept of a look ahead. And what I mean is you look ahead in the poem in order to affirm things that are earlier. And so what you're doing is kind of, he has that quote, if you got a fish on your hook, why would you go fishing? Or if you bake a cake and you leave out an ingredient, you still have a cake. It's like all these things need to come together and they need to work together. So with a holistic solution, I think a lot of the challenge here is that folks aren't figuring out where to adapt and where to jump from the map to boots on the ground. And, it could be a concept where you're looking ahead in the poem and you're seeing these things on the map. They might be a lot further than you envisioned, but at some point you still need to take it in the canyon. You need to be physically there. But in order to identify that canyon, maybe you need to be a little bit more imaginative during your map phase as opposed to being on the ground. I don't know if any of that made any sense to you, but
No, it does. It does.
okay.
And I actually have that philosophy, and Cynthia was there when I communicated that to Forrest, and it was quite an interesting exchange. Cynthia, 50 miles approximately between WWWH to Treasure Chest, especially with that one exchange that you got to witness. What do you think?
No, I'm a firm believer everything's real close together, because otherwise you can circumvent it. I mean, to me, and he once said, like, there's only one way in. So I think the not far but too far to walk, that's the toughest one for me, trying to decide, do you actually continue to drive in the canyon or whatever, between your canyon and the home of Brown? Do you drive, or is that a clue to something that is what everybody is missing, because it appears no one's really getting past the first two clues? So I go back and forth with that. There have been times when I actually did drive from my WWH. I was already in the canyon, but I just drove from the WWH down the road like a mile or two, crossed, and then went back up the other side of the river. So where actually the treasure was still fairly close to the WWH. It's just, to get there, I had to drive down, cross the river, and go back up. So I don't know. I think the people with the holistic approach, and I think that's what Michael Huell was saying in the marathon, I sure am not going to disagree and say that's wrong. It's just not my approach.
Yeah, that's kind of why I toggle between the two different approaches. I'm fickle. I can't make up my mind. But if for the more traditional, very straightforward approach, I agree that the clues are very close together. That's just my opinion. And also, I don't like subjectivity. When you say not far but too far to walk, well, how far is that? From my perspective, it's a finality. Like, you literally cannot do it. And that could mean you wade instead of walk, or some alternate mode of transportation, but because it's not that far.
Could it be that it's across the river? I mean, you can see it.
Yeah.
You can't walk
Oh, yeah.
the bridge. You've got to drive across the bridge to get over there, something like that.
Yeah, I really think it's something like that. And maybe that's one reason why kids have an advantage, because it seems like all the adults are afraid to get wet. When I go out searching, and if someone wants to come with me, I say the more the merrier. And the first stream crossing we get to, everybody turns their nose up and they don't want to dip their feet in. It's like, well, you're gonna get wet. So and that's one of the reasons I don't wear Gore-Tex boots anymore. Like, they just fill with water and they never dry out. So I just walk right on through nowadays, as long as it's not dangerous, and I dry out. It's fine. It doesn't hurt me. But I like that concept of something that literally you can't walk it. And whether that's, you crawl, you wade, you swim, whatever it may be. I can't imagine swimming with 20 pounds on you, but a boat, whatever it is. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine Forrest at 80 swimming. Okay, so I'm not sure who this one is for between the two of you. Have you ever met Forrest? No, this is probably for Justin.
Yeah.
I met him in passing at the Collected Works bookstore many years ago, and he probably doesn't even recall it. I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of funny about that. I didn't want to invade, anybody's privacy, and you could tell that he was already preoccupied with other things. And I briefly said hello, but that was the extent of it.
I found it funny when we were at the Operation Jamie, up at the Blue Corn, there was probably, I want to say 50 searchers or so. And there was a lot that were like, I really want to go over and say hi, but I'm so nervous now, because they put it in their head, like, who he was and all that. And I'm like, oh, come on. And we took every single person over between Mike and I to make sure they at least just got to say, some said hello, some gave a little more, but it was interesting. Everybody kind of took that moment differently, which was kind of cool to it all meant something different, and how much they shared and how much and Forrest was so gracious, even though it was a long day. But it was interesting because that moment was different for so many people. So
the flip side has a question for Cynthia, and I'll ask it to Justin as well. Have you been to the waterfall up Sunlight Creek just below White Mountain?
Yes.
Rule that out.
Trying to recall where that's at.
And he actually posts a lat long of exactly where that's at. So if anybody wants
to take a look, there's a couple of hidden waterfalls back there. And I guess I just don't know the names of all of them. So maybe.
You know what I want to do when we go? I'm actually going to leave a chaseopoly out there in the wilderness. Just put it right on a log, right, for the next person just to see. I just leave it right out of stone.
Throwing that idea out for the coin. That's how the coin started. And now
I'm going to leave a game too. It'll be
fun.
Go ahead.
Can I talk to Justin just for a second? So I think the waterfall that he was talking about, it's Sunlight Creek, and I think it's just called the Upper Falls and the Lower Falls are real close together. But anyway, if you Google that, it'll give you directions on where to park. I mean, it's easy to do. I could do it. So it was easy, and it'll tell you exactly where you can park, and then it's just a real quick walk right over to the falls.
That's right. Yeah, there's actually a couple of interesting roads around there. For some folks I've heard that were kind of interested in the solution, the starting point at least, but actually tending more toward the Clark Fork. And I'm sure you're aware, Cynthia, but there are roads that can take you right down very close to the junction there on the opposite side, which is pretty handy too. It's not always obvious how to get there. You can see the road, but you don't know how to get around to it. But you dig into the maps and it becomes pretty apparent.
If you go through the little town of Clark, you can get onto the other side, and that brings you out almost to the confluence of where Dead Indian and Sunlight enter Clark's Fork. And there's also a real big waterfall there called, I think that's Bridal Veil.
That sounds right.
So what is the clue that you believe you get out of the car? That came from the chat a while ago. I'm sorry.
I think that depends on one of the categories of solutions that I've been discussing. For the very straightforward solution, I think at some point he even said, well, you start out the journey by getting in your car and driving to where warm waters halt. I mean, that sounds pretty straightforward. I think the turning point, it has to be somewhere around not far, but too far to walk. Some people interpret that you need to drive, and that might be legitimate. But for other people, it might be more definitive. For some people, you could walk 50 miles, right? I mean, get in your car and drive, to me personally, it's a little weak, just because it feels like it's not definitive enough. I want. Maybe this is my confirmation bias, but I want something that you can't walk it. It's just too far. So that's just me.
So what do you think we're all missing?
Context. That's what I mentioned on the show last time. I still think it's a function of context and the right dose of imagination. It's like I said, it's easy to get off the rails and come up with some really wild stuff, and I've done that. Lord knows I've done that. But you got to keep it grounded in logic. So I think context.
The blaze. Get it? What do you think, Cynthia? Why is this so hard? What are we all missing?
I don't know. That's one of the things I can't figure out. And I got an email today from a guy that was a searcher really early on. He asked me about my opinion about that. I think this is a direct quote from Forrest. If you are in the right spot, something you probably haven't thought about should be obvious to you. That's what we're missing.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm interested in both of your thoughts on this. So I believe, well, let me just ask the question, then I don't even know if we care about what I believe. What happens after Forrest Fenn dies to the hunt?
Yeah, I mean, it goes on. I think it's going to be muddy waters. We all know that there's folks in the community that are a little unscrupulous in the sense that they claim to have found something they have not. And that's just going to be amplified, I think. And unfortunately, it gets even more complex because you can tell folks have done models of the chest. You can go and buy like a full scale model And it's easy to pull off what I would consider to be a pretty convincing hoax. And I think you could convince a lot of folks that it has been found. So, you know, I don't think anybody knows with any certainty, you know, when the chest is found, how people will know it right away and there won't be any doubt. I mean, beyond Forrest announcing it. And without his presence, I think that that's going to be a challenge. And so at the end of the day, I think, you know, unless it's verified through some sort of auction or something, if someone's auctioning it off or donating it to a museum or whatnot, it's just going to be faith, I think, and just a question of whether or not you still believe it's out there.
What do you think, Cynthia?
Yeah, I pretty much agree. Hopefully the thing that Forrest replaced the IOU with is going to be something that someone claims, and that will be the real indicator, at least to someone like myself, that it really was found. But until I see something like that, I will not believe it. I mean, like Dustin said, I think there's going to be so darn many people claiming that they found it. And until I see something like what I just mentioned, which I don't know what it is, but until I see that, I won't believe it.
It's pretty frustrating. You know, I mean, if everybody in the community could just, you know, have some basic decency and some manners, then we'd never have this concern. But it is what it is in today's world. So, you know, that's actually one of the vexing questions for me that I spend a lot of nights pondering. And that is, you know, originally he had an IOU in the chest for what, $10,000. And he took that out and he found a more definitive way to find out whether or not the chest had been found. And, you know, I've heard a lot of theories on what that way is. And maybe that kind of segues into confirmation and knowing that it's been found. But who knows? Tough to say.
Well, I think two things. One, I think that the number of searchers are going to go down dramatically because we have seen what I call basic drama in the chase, and that's driven a lot of searchers away. And I think the amount of drama of, I found it, here's this, here's that, it's going to be so much on some people that they're like, I'm out. But I do believe Forrest has thought this through. So there is going to be some way, either publicly or not publicly, that it will be validated by Forrest from the heavens, from the something that is going to validate. He might not say it though, because this might be where you do have to persevere through all of the chaos that will come after he passes, to be really committed, not stumble upon it, etc. I think that might be what he's referencing. But I think the number of searchers will go down and it'll become kind of a myth, but there'll be the hardcorers, the ones that are really into boots on the ground, focused on that piece. I think it'll focus on that piece, but I do think Forrest has already thought through that. There's some things that have surprised him, he said in our interview, that he didn't think through, that he, you know, searcher deaths being one of them, a few other things. This is one that I think he had to know, he had to think through. But I don't think he's saying, I don't think he's ever said in an interview that I mean, he's never said, yeah, it's with a lawyer. Yeah, it's with Shiloh. Yeah, it's with somebody. He just says, I die. And it's like, that's one thing. He's like, I don't think he's taken to the grave. He's taken to his grave, but he has a plan, I think.
I agree with you. I couldn't agree more. But you know, it's one of the things, and I've heard Toby and I will probably disagree on this. I know Toby had mentioned at some point, and I apologize if I'm misquoting you, Toby, that, you know, hypothesizing around the legalities is somewhat dubious. I actually think that's really interesting because it can help, for me anyway, either include areas that I wouldn't otherwise consider or vice versa. And the legalities, like for instance, you know, maybe he has a title to the land and it's on his own private land cloaked in some other name. And so when you get the chest, the title's inside, you sign over the title to yourself, it transitions in the registry. He knows because he can see that it's changed names. He gets notification of that. And you legally own what's on your land. So that seems like a pretty cut and dry, simple way to do this. But that's actually why I went state by state and talked to several different attorneys in property law to better understand, you know, and I think I mentioned this before, but just to reiterate, spoke to attorneys in each state that specialized in property law and talked about what I would do. I said, I'm an eccentric guy and I'm considering hiding something of value. Where can I do this and get away with it? And what are the legal ramifications? And it was a really interesting process, because the way that most lawyers start out is they say, oh, well, this is simple. You actually need to do a lease from someone else, because that will keep your name away for the, from the whole paper trail and everything. You're not tied to it beyond this lease that you sign that you can cloak in and of itself. And you lease it for a period of time, and you're golden. You're fine, and you have some insurance that you take out on somebody stumbling around or hurting themselves. But the doozy is when you say, well, hold on, I'm not sure when it's going to be found. And, confusion ensues. They're like, hold on, you mean 6 months, a year? I say, no, like maybe 100 years or 1,000 years. And that changes everything. The timeline is a big challenge, because you need something that perseveres beyond your life. And
Right.
how do you really make that happen? And what I found more than anything is it varies by state. There are some interesting things, like, for instance, and I'm not a lawyer, so this is just all my opinion, but as I understand it, in New Mexico, you can actually designate a portion of your land as a family graveyard. That doesn't mean you have gravestones and everything there, but you're designating it through tax law as a graveyard. And as a result, that land is either taxed at a severely reduced rate, or it's not taxed at all. And that's pretty beneficial to someone who is thinking well into the future, where, well, if I have an escrow account and someone's debiting the taxes from this account, what happens when it ultimately runs dry? What happens to the land? But if you've made it in a way that there are no taxes that you have to pay, well, that seems to be a big benefit. And
Now,
and
is
in
that
Mon-
registered through the clerk, the county clerk, or is that officially registered, or can you do that behind a cloak, if you will?
No, I mean, you have to own the land. So
Right.
you would have to cloak ownership of the land. I'm just referring to like all the legalities of owning land in a cloaked state, because after you die, someone's still got to pay taxes on it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I hadn't
Yeah.
thought of that designation before, but that would go where he focuses on graveyard, like his affinity and his interest. That's an interesting caveat I've not heard before. I've heard private property, but it's always the taxes, and then it'd have to be a living trust. And if it's a living trust, somebody has to be the executor. Then that means one other person would know. And like, this would be a way that it would minimize that significantly. That's interesting that I've gone 100 different ways on this particular set, and I've talked to many realtors and many attorneys, but that never came up. That's interesting.
So if you've talked to attorneys in all 4 states, is there one state that looked more attractive, or he could have done it in any of the 4 states, at least from the lawyer's viewpoint that you talked to?
You can do it in any of the 4 states. At the end of the day, they say ultimately it's going to be best if you own the land.
Okay.
In Wyoming is the end of that sentence.
Yeah, possibly. But if you don't want the ownership, there are some ways, but they're very obscure. One of the interesting ways, actually in Montana, is around state trust land. State trust land actually has a lot of freedom, or autonomy, I should say. So each piece of state trust land, the steward of that land has the autonomy to make more obscure creative contracts, if you will. And, it's possible that you could work something out with one of those state land stewards where, you could hide something on there that would be okay for the finder to take with some really extended period of time, like contract of like 1,000 years or something. So that's a possibility. That was a pretty strong one for Montana. But, at the end of the day, it's always safest, since the timeline is questionable, that you own the land. But that brings up a whole other set of complications around cloaking ownership and around paying taxes for perpetuity, all that fun stuff.
Well, it seems on its face to me, the only way that when Forrest says, what if there is no legal complication, or what if there is no, that he has to own it. He has to own it because laws can change 1,000 years from now. Regulations can change, land can change, all of the law, except if you own the land. And that might not even because of eminent domain, et cetera. But the safest of all of that definitely seems to be private property, but it seems there's complications, but that might be the way through. Cynthia, what type of land do you think it's on? Do you have a strong opinion on this?
Oh, I prefer looking in the national forest because they seem to be the most lax. But there again, things can change there too. So actually, to me, the safest place it could be where it won't change is in a national park, which would be within Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone National Park, I bet, is going to still be there 1,000 years from now. It still won't be very developed. It might be more developed than it is, but that's probably the only place in the Rocky Mountains that for sure is still going to be there and not be overly overdeveloped or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
Cynthia, you hit the nail on the head. I totally agree with that. I think what it boils down to is stable ownership rights. USFS, BLM, those types of things are actually kind of volatile. They can be leased out to logging activities. They do change hands. They're just kind of a scary place to hide something of great value, just given the volatility. So private land ownership, that is a definite possibility. When I first started in this, I thought there's no way he would hide this in a national park. I mean, golly, that just seems crazy. You can't even pick up a rock at a national park. But once you do some research and get more familiar with the codes and chapters that apply to lost and found property within the park, and basically just lost and found, it's really not as bad as I thought it was, and it's extremely stable ownership rights. I mean, you're right. I think 1,000 years from now, your best shot is going to be a place that's protected to that degree.
So can a private citizen own land in a national park? Let's take Yellowstone. Can I own land in Yellowstone, or because it's a national park, nobody owns it?
I think there are outliers, right? In
Look at Soldier
lots
Stone.
of places.
Look at the gravesite of God, I've just
What's
lost
her name in Yellowstone that we
Yeah.
were at? Cowlazars.
Maddie Culver's grave. Sure.
Who owns that land? I mean, is it possible the forest could own land in Yellowstone is really the question, right? I mean, I don't know how that would work, but
and they don't advertise it, and there's a monument that was built there, and the only thing that could reveal that is a FOIA. I don't want to say that word because people's heads explode and they spin around 9 times.
So, or if Forrest owned it, but then donated it to the park, but had a caveat that this can never be touched. I mean, is that a possibility?
Right, but that caveat is found in an MOU that is filed, and it is because it is public land. Taxpayers own the right to have that revealed through a FOIA.
Yeah, there's also like in USFS land, there's a concept of being a steward where you lease the land for an extended period of time with rights to renewal. I mean, a good edge case would be like my grandfather a long time ago in Montana bought some mining claims, and they were like $50 back in 1940s, 50s. And as time progressed, the mining claims that surrounded his were purchased by the Forest Service, but he never sold out. And so it's basically locked in the sense that it's bordered by the Forest Service, but it's still private property. And, we could build a cabin there if we wanted to, but it's just kind of landlocked in that sense. And we still have access, like there's right of way to allow us to access that land, but just an interesting edge case where that sort of thing can happen, where you end up being an island in a national forest or something to that effect.
And Sledneck says private land is grandfathered in national parks. Glacier has many. Yellowstone National Park was formed before settlers were within the boundaries.
Yeah, and I think that there's a way to like.
Could it be 500 years from now that changes? Like, it just seems like anything can change, and he's thought through something. I remember maybe, what year was it, Cynthia, that there was all the fires and Benbury didn't happen. It went to like a hotel or a motel or something.
In New Mexico, that was in 2017, I believe.
So in that time, I remember asking Forrest, I was like, I've always considered going to New Mexico. I hadn't at the time. I was like, I would think that things are shut down. Is anybody going to find the treasure if it's in New Mexico? And I remember he emailed back and said, he said something like, the national forest is shut down. I don't think so. And it was like, national forest? Okay, I want to say rabbit hole. This is kind of a joke. But it wasn't. At the time, I jumped down which national forests were closed and this and that. I thought I got something. He didn't slip. He was just, but that made me think, what could be closed? What could be non-accessible later? What could be closed down at certain periods of time? All of that, and then that's when I got into national forests, have a whole set of laws based on abandoned property, lost property, etc., versus all the different state parks versus there's so many variables. Unless it's private property, that seems like the only one that's not accessible. Even though he talks about rent is kind of equal to lease in some cases that Justin's brought up. So rent and lease are similar. I don't think he's going to say the exact word, but anyway, I went off.
Steve Wayne kind of had a good point. He says it doesn't matter who owns the land. If you find it, you're the finder. And that kind of goes back to Forrest saying, if you find it, in my opinion, you own it. There's that video.
Okay. I went next door and there was an awesome gold coin and I found it. It happened to be in my neighbor's house, but I found it. How is that logic hold if it's in
okay, well, let me ask you this. Is Forrest the kind of person that's, because remember, he always knew the location. He built this knowing the location beforehand. He says, I was going to make it work no matter what. So is he the type of person where, because he says, I consider that to be mine and mine alone. What if somebody else owns that land, but Forrest considers his secret spot his? He's like, I'm going to hide it there and I don't care. Whoever finds it can just take it home and not tell anybody. Would Forrest?
Mike, you're right, man. That's the big thing I've always grappled with is that on one hand, he says, well, what if there is no legal question? I love that interview, by the way. But then on the other hand, he says, I knew from the very beginning where I was going to hide it. I was going to make it work no matter what.
Right.
I think you missed the marathon, Mike, and maybe Justin too. Lisa put that to bed. If you break the law, it breaks the contract. Right. The only thing I think Forrest wants more than the finder to find it, he does not want the government to be able to rip it out of their hands and them not to have it. So I think he has figured out a way for it to be legal, yet the finder actually has it. This is just my opinion. And I think if the redneck that has 12 kids is not going to have an advanced lawyer and all of that, so that it's going to be so obvious that it is theirs, I don't think they're going to have to hire these big wig attorneys. That's going to be more than the $1 million.
Well, from what Justin said, it sounds like the easiest way to make that happen is Forrest somehow, some way does own the land that the treasure chest is on. That would be the easiest way. Now, we don't know if he was able to do that and then conceal it from us, from all the searchers somehow.
When you say Forrest does not or does?
Does. The easiest way would be that he does own the land somehow, some way.
Okay, yes.
It's a possibility. Yeah.
He acquired it after he had the idea. I mean, if he just had a spot he went to, let's say he was a kid, could he have acquired that land when he got the idea for the treasure chest and also done it to where it's shielded that nobody's ever going to be able to figure out? I don't know.
It's funny you mentioned that because like years ago, and this would be the most astronomical coincidence in the history of coincidences, but a long time ago, around the time he was hiding this, like we got an inquiry for that piece of property I was discussing earlier, and it was like this attorney represented some person, his client, and said that they were interested in purchasing this, and it was very important to them, and name your price type of thing. I mean, we didn't sell, but you just kind of, the very back of my mind, I think about that. And I'm like, man, maybe he was fishing for a piece of land back then. You never know.
Well, I think Forrest, being who Forrest is, if he wanted something, he's going to make it happen. If he's like, I want to, tea with Olga, she wouldn't sell her property. So he went back and had tea, and he went back again, and he went back again. And finally they worked a deal to where he's going to own it, but she could live there. Right. That's in the thrill of the chase. So to me, if Forrest really wanted to make something happen, he had the money and the time and the smarts to make it happen. Go ahead, Cynthia.
So my question to you, Justin, you said you guys own like an island in the woods that's now surrounded by national forest or whatever. So do you guys still have to pay property tax on that land? And if that's the case, which I assumed it would be, if Fenn has private property, even if it's not surrounded by forest, or even if it is, then how, after he passes away, how does that property tax get paid?
Yeah, that's the big challenge. With certain types of designations, like just the cemetery I was mentioning earlier, there are certain loopholes that would allow you to have a severely reduced tax rate or eliminate taxes. But those are kind of few and far between, and I'm not sure any of those would make sense in this situation. So that's the big question for me is I'm on the fence of whether or not he could pull this off with his own private land, because someone's got to pay the taxes, and at some point in the future that account's going to run dry. So how do you make that work?
And,
Yeah, but what if it was a living okay, so here's what I was thinking. If there was a larger piece of property that then he parceled out a very small piece of property that had a very small amount of let's say a couple $100 a year, and he had some sort of estate person, that's the piece though. Someone else would need to know, even if he paid it 100 years in advance. I know some people, I went through my mom's estate. She had paid some taxes up front for several years that helped us to be able to not have to deal with market volatility and things. And so when I look at all that, I go, there's a way, but there's always one other person that's going to know. So, or they may not know, they just know that these are taxes that are going to be paid. So is there a way that he's masked it so someone pays it, but they don't know what they're paying? They just know that they're paying a tax bill. They don't know what it is.
And super chatted and said, you make it work with a corporation. Is that
yeah, well, corporations still got to pay taxes.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been looking into is maybe it's a piece of leased land that he's not leasing. There's some other entity that's leasing it, but the entity has enough clout behind it and enough history and enough of a foundation where you have confidence that they're going to continue to have lease rights for a long time. And so you can kind of piggyback on that. Like if they have more permissive rules in the way that they're using the land, then you're okay putting something there as long as they don't lose their lease. Or they just choose not to renew, but it would have to be an entity that you would have a lot of trust in.
Or the opposite, I'm thinking someone that doesn't know you at all, that's like a Schwab, that doesn't know or care about you at all. As long as you paid it up front, it's almost like a mechanism. I tried to get some support from AT&T and they said, we don't understand your question. This is a bot. And it was like, so you don't even get a real person. It's just paid. I've gone both ways, exactly like you're saying, because if it's someone that knows who he is, maybe he has a ghost person, and then but then that gets really complicated. So that's where I'm like, I'm kind of with the keep it simple, stupid type of thing. So
my Las Vegas friend, Dominate with the super chat. He's got a good point.
Hey, Dom.
Dom. If the private land is covertly owned, leased, how do you get permission? If you don't have permission, how is it not trespassing?
Well, there's the concept of a registered agent for a piece of property. And again, I'm not a lawyer. This is all just my speculation and opinion, but registered agents oftentimes have the ability to execute instructions on behalf of the actual owner. And that might be in the form of like allowing access, for instance. For instance, the registered agent on the piece of property that I was interested in near Sunlight Basin, who happens to sit on the board of advisors at the Bill Cody Museum alongside Forrest for a long while.
Ding, ding.
Sorry?
I just said ding, ding, ding.
Now, that's a coincidence.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that sign that they posted is almost like an invitation. It's saying enter at your own risk. You can come in. It's still private property, but you can tread here.
Or what if there is no signs? If somebody owns property but there's no signs, I can legally walk across it because I didn't know. I didn't know who owns it. I didn't know.
Yeah, it depends. Like in Texas, we have something called the Purple Post Law, and that is, the landowner can paint a post purple, and it's not just a decorative motif. It actually means that there is no trespassing.
Really?
So it's a visual indicator to someone. Yeah. Different states do different things in how some of them require a very explicit no trespassing sign, others don't. Wow. So I think the important thing here is you're responsible to ensure that you're not trespassing. And oftentimes that requires a bit of research ahead of time to understand the land that you're planning to cross. And if you determine ahead of time that it's private property and you're not able to gain permission either explicitly or implicitly through some sort of signage, then it's not the place for you.
So Mark Connor says, just because you lease something doesn't mean you own it. Like a mining lease, the landowner still gets a portion of the money.
Right. Well, and then you get into exactly what you were saying. There are certain types of corporations that you can still remain anonymous. Nevada happens to be one of them because we own a corporation, a limited liability corporation, but Wyoming happens to be another one. And there's 4 or 5 states that make it very easy to be able to be anonymous. But again, once someone knows it, there is a lawyer that knows it. Like if we decided to be anonymous with our LLC, we would have a lawyer that knows who we are in case of litigation. And so when Forrest says two can keep a secret if one of them is dead, I believe it's more mass than trusting a lawyer. No offense to lawyers, Lisa and Joel. I don't mean this with you.
There is confidentiality there, though, right? Your lawyer can't disclose that legally, can they?
Lawyers, they're scum. I mean, there's a lot of them are not good human beings.
Oh, geez.
And that's something I touched on in that Journey to the Light thing from 2014 on Dale's blog. And that is, maybe there's a bit of an ambiguity here, right? Like let's say you have a 100-acre claim and you have a registered agent and the registered agent knows your identity. He knows your forest fen. But he doesn't know where on that 100 acres exactly you've hidden something.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but a possibility.
And you can't tell me that Forrest Fenn doesn't own a bunch of property. I mean, he's somebody with a lot of money. Wouldn't you think he owns property in different states?
You wouldn't believe how much time I've spent looking through property records.
You can't tell me he doesn't own any money,
I know he owns different land, but think about it this way. So his grandchildren, etc., family gets all that land and then they start selling some of it off. Would he want some of it sold off if it has a treasure chest? If it doesn't have the treasure chest, yeah, it's narrowed it down to 1,000 acres. So, okay, here's a question from a super chat. Heavy Load says, what about an easement on some of the types of land? Easements laws change. 900 years from now, do you think easement laws are going to be the same, including eminent domain, which I never thought I'd see a day that the government can just come in and take it if they want to. My family owned a piece of land in a rural part. They took it and especially in these small towns that have 1 or 2 significant families that they own the town. It's amazing the skullduggery that can happen. But Justin, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I'll let Cynthia go first.
I think everything you guys just said just really narrows it down and supports it's in Yellowstone National Park. That's the only place that absolutely doesn't have any of these issues. And I still say it's possible that Forrest knew exactly what he needed to put inside that chest to make it something that even if you're going to be a conscientious person and you actually do tell the superintendent, there's something in that he knew to put in there that makes it no issue.
Okay, hold on a second. You stated earlier that you're not searching in Yellowstone.
I am now. I just changed.
I'm not that persuasive. Come on.
Well, it's found in Yellowstone. Wouldn't the superintendent and park rangers be so happy that this thing is finally over? They'd be like,
"Oh, you bet." Yeah.
Like it's finally over. Get all these crazy people out of the park. They probably want it found. Maybe.
Probably.
Yeah, good discussion. But I think it was Hooley that pointed out, what if there are no legal issues? Somehow, some way, Forrest, 1 or 2 things has happened. Forrest has figured it out legally, or Forrest the Maverick is like, I'm going to hide it there. And whoever finds it, in my opinion, owns it. I don't care who owns the land.
And I think Lisa was spot on when she talked about contract execution by performance. Like, I think that sounds just about right to me.
Yeah, I think maybe Forrest thinks the poem will stand up for ownership issues. It's right there. I wonder if the poem is in the chest. I know his autobiography is, but is a copy of the poem in the chest somehow, some way? I don't know if he's ever confirmed or denied that it is.
his hair is, I think
His
it's
hair is in. So you have ownership. I mean, if you want to get technical, there's DNA. You could say this is Forrest Fenn's chest. Here's some hair.
Candy is saying, I know I've changed Cynthia's mind. That's what happened. You've been persuaded by Candy. Yeah. Candy. That's changed the game. There you go. There you have it. There it is.
And another super chat from Heavy Loads who says, everyone loves a happy ending. I hope it's a happy ending when this thing is found. I hope it's not
One
a big
can hope.
out, legal case and all that crazy stuff.
Oh, if there were 4 lawsuits because there happened to be a blog that somebody put something similar on in Sassy's case, I can only imagine. Not that there's any validity to it, just like this last lawsuit that was Hansen against Forrest. Forrest got it thrown out quick, but he still paid some money to an attorney. He still had to defend it.
Did it thrown out, or did the other guy realize what he was in for and voluntarily withdrew it? I'm just asking because I don't know.
Cynthia?
I don't know.
In other words, did a judge rule that it had no merit and threw it out, or did the guy voluntarily withdraw it because he realized Forrest was, going to be involved?
There was a count, from what I understand, that the legal filings I saw, there was a countersuit filed by Forrest to say, you want to mess with me, I'm going to slap you silly. And that person negotiated with a mediator. I don't know if that person was paid or not, but Forrest was served. He had an attorney involved. I guarantee that attorney made some money. And that there was then enough that this person said, oh, let me just withdraw this. But there was an interchange there was a lawyer involved on Forrest's side.
As I recall, was it dismissed with prejudice by the judge? Does that sound right?
I don't know.
I don't know if the prejudice parts happened. I've had some experience in this one, so I don't know if it was no precedent. I don't know that piece.
Christopher Robbins says, my understanding is that Forrest was asking for attorney fees, and then the guy decided not to pursue it because if he loses, he didn't want to pay, he's not going to want to pay that money. So that's
I would say with prejudice. So then he can't bring it back. For those of you that don't know, then they can't bring it back. He can't bring it back to court later. Basically, this guy has been spanked so hard, he can't come back ever. And Forrest sent a message. I was appreciative of how he dealt with it, because people need to think again when they do something like this. It's not just Forrest defended himself. He went on the offensive and was ready with attorney. By that statement, I think it's going to be prejudice. But
KT Southwest says it was dismissed with prejudice by agreement of both parties, that they both signed off on it.
Yeah, and as I understand it, dismissing it with prejudice means that it's a permanent dismissal. They can't bring it up again.
right. So this person is not able to, again, bring up that he can't file again at a later time. Without prejudice means we're still trying to work it out or figure it out. I'll come back later if I want to. Nope. He smacked it down. He said, you're not coming back ever. And there was a time that this guy filed, and now there's this time this guy said, I'm gone forever.
So just switching gears, I did see a question go by earlier, and they wanted to know from Justin and Cynthia, why do you think Forrest ruled out Idaho and Utah? Were those the two? Yeah.
Yes.
What do you think, Cynthia?
He rolled them out because some arrogant person made a comment, I think on Dale's this is a long time ago. They were bragging about how they had solved the poem and they knew that he hit it. And I think it was Utah, they said. And so Forrest thought, yeah, right. Wait till I say what I'm about to say next. And he came out with that quote.
Really?
Just to smack him down.
Never heard that before. Although I know a lot of people were thinking the Salt Lake in Utah is where warm water's held.
Actually, I think his official reason was because there's hardly any Rocky Mountains that go through Utah and Idaho, which is actually bogus. There's a lot of Rocky Mountains in Idaho. But.
Well, okay, on something very similar, I had asked Forrest for words on Thor to get it going for a while. And he was like, no, not yet. No, not yet. And then somebody posted on a site we will not name, the site that shall never be named, Cynthia. Forrest lived in Colorado and went on and on about how he lived in Colorado and resided in Colorado. And he's like, here's the one. I never resided in, and he like laid it out like, I never resided in Colorado. This is wrong. This is, that opened the door for like 15 other sets of words, but that was the first one because he was just like, stop completely lying, and not lying because that's intent, but like misinformation, and people had really thought this person wasn't spreading misinformation, and they obviously were, and that's how it started there. So that's interesting. I didn't know that part.
Yeah, me either. I'd not heard that story before. What
I
about you?
almost feel like it had the opposite effect in the sense that, people started making a lot more bogus claims, but unfortunately it was a little challenging for him to decrease the search area any further. So
And he seems so dug into never ruling out a search state. And I wonder if there's more to it because of the cover of TTOTC, or do you think he'll ever rule out another search state, or do you think there'll always be 4 until he dies?
I think it'll be 4.
So, Christy, you have to understand that when he rolled those out, wasn't that like in 2011 or 2012? It was early
my time. I was in 2015 is when I started, and they were already.
It was really early in the chase before it got way so big. I think back then, at the time, the only forum was probably Dale. I don't know if the CC one was there or not at that time, but I think Forrest really, really changed the way he responded to searchers and people and some of their ridiculous claims over in the 10 years since it started.
Well, and I think at least in the beginning, he thought if he would, this is my words, if someone said something so outlandish and he made it so obvious it wasn't the case, then no one would listen to that person or group again. And then it did exactly what somebody said. I think it was Justin. Then they just came up with more stuff and it was never ending. I don't think he thought, one thing he said at some time, I never thought people that were against me would like spend their entire, like there's some sites and some things that are, their entire lives are against this is a hoax. There's not a treasure chest. This is that. I don't think he expected that level of someone committing their life to say this is something that's not true. I think he thought people have lives and they're not that sick in the head that this would be their life mission for the next 30, 40, 50 years to just say every day. I mean, there was somebody that had a video every day or that every day. I don't think he anticipated that.
Yeah, as my dad always said, the more I'm around people, the more I like my dog. There's a lot of, unfortunately, just questionable folks involved. It's a bummer.
And people that are mentally off as well. This thing seems to attract them for some reason. I don't know why, but it does.
Well, I'm clearly one of them. I mean, 700 boots on the ground. I'm certifiable at this point.
looking for this thing, but in a good way. There's some people that are really off. But
is there time that I can ask Justin a question?
Of course.
May I ask him a question?
Yes.
So Justin, you mentioned your SSA, which stands for Solution Strength Algorithm, and which, if you break it down into my words, how do you rate the strength of a potential solution? And when you asked me that, I really, really liked that. Do you have an answer? I want to know what your answer is for that, if you have one that you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, SSA, not to be confused with the Social Security Administration, is just my fancy way of saying, how do you gauge the strength of your solution? And I think it's what I found is it's different for everybody, and I think that's a good thing in the sense that that's what it's going to take to have enough varied solutions to find this thing. For me, there's a set of criteria, and the question is how much weight you apply to each of those criteria. For instance, imagination, or just the legalities involved. There's all these things that come together to form some sort of equation of sorts that tells you whether or not your solution is strong or weak. And I think a lot of folks, myself included at times, confirmation bias enters the picture, and it gets a little more inflated than it should. And I think that's a good reason to go back to basics. But for me, yes, I have a set of criteria that I use. In fact, a lot of it hasn't changed since 2014, and I listed that in the blog on Dale's site. So for those interested, you're welcome to peruse through that. Don't feel like you have to read the whole thing because I just blabber on for a long time. But that if you're interested in my criteria and everything, I think it's all listed there. But the main aspects are around, I think that it's one of two things. One is the search, or the area where the chest is hidden is a one way in, one way out type of deal, where it's just not feasible to approach it from any other direction. Or all of the clues are holistically pointing to more of a singular location. I think it's, in my opinion, it's one of those two things. So, if I end up with a solution where, there's a lot of different ways to get to it, and I'm not looking at a singular solution, then it's weaker in my mind. And the other piece is accessibility. You look at topography and terrain, you get there on site, and you got to be honest with yourself around what sort of terrain would be reasonable for a man of that age. And that's a hard question for me to answer at times, just because, when my grandfather was 80, he could outrun me. He was in excellent shape. And I know that's not forest, but I don't know how far. There are folks here that know him much better than I do. They've seen what he was physically at that time. The only thing that I have at my disposal are just video clips where I see him walking a little bit here and there, and it's clear that he can get around. And he doesn't have any mobility issues, but I don't know what his threshold is. We all know that he didn't, as he said, walk more than a few miles from his car. So we have that in mind. So I think that it is a place where if there's some sort of road, you can't go 2 miles or less to wherever you're going. I think it's too far. So that's another piece. And then, there's the obvious thing around water. If there's no fishing in the vicinity, I'm still okay with it, but that makes my solution a little bit weaker, just because I tend to think if he's umbilically attached to this place, it's something that speaks to him. And we all know that what he would hold most near and dear or close to it would be fishing. So I think those things combined, there's some other criteria I could talk about, but that's a good starting point. How about you, Cynthia? What do you have on your list?
Yeah, we're similar. Obviously, I have to have the WWH, whatever I use. Even when I use metaphors, I still had to have something that I thought was viable at the time, and the canyon. But then one of the early lessons I learned was when I posted one of my solutions on Dale's blog, and someone said, well, why would that be a special place? And it's like, yeah, I finally understood then at that point that it can't just even be pretty. There's got to be a reason. And like you just touched on, Justin, fishing. For me, it's more like arrowhead collecting, but fishing works as well, or where both of those things are in the spot. And then my other question to you, we everybody talks about WWH Canyon and Homer Brown. Justin, do you believe that heavy loads and water high is one clue? And if so, your water high, do you believe it is actually a water feature? Since in the interview from back on 2014, he said, Margie Goldsmith said to him something about water high, and he said, what about water high? Does it mean deep or higher than normal? Which implies it really is water. What's your opinion about the water high and the heavy loads?
Yeah, I tend to think that's one singular, be something like a waterfall, or he likes to play on words. You think about the flutterby and butterfly. Maybe you can take a riff on that, and here I've identified this. It's pretty clear what this is. Let me continue on. But yeah, I tend to take it at face value. What do you think?
Yeah, and I do too. And so anymore, because I have to drive and spend more money, I also try to make sure that there's some kind of a geographic feature that can be, I believe it is going to be water. I don't, is it a waterfall? After him saying that statement to the kids, I tend to think it's not a waterfall, but I definitely do believe that there's got to be something that is water for water high. And there again, deep water, heavy loads and water high, that's definitely a fly fishing term for the loads when you're fly fishing in a deep pool of water. So I think it may be something along those lines. I don't know, but
yeah. A
water.
good play on words would be something like brimstone, right? So you fill something up to the brim, so that's high water, and a stone could be heavy, right?
Yeah.
Brimstone is like heavy loads and water high. It could be something like that, sort of like the flutterby analogy. But beyond that, yeah, probably something pretty straightforward.
Well, William super chatted. Thank you, William. Happy birthday. Forrest said he could throw a bicycle into the water, into water high. So could it be, and then he does backwards bicycle. I'm ad-libbing this. Could it be something, something there? That's what he puts in.
That's the tricky part too. You have to be very careful, I think, around how he words things. I think we all know, a pretty good wordsmith. And one of the things that he's very clear, he didn't say, I didn't go more than a few miles from my car. He said, I didn't walk more than a few miles from my car. And that doesn't preclude him riding a bicycle for some distance before he began walking. And maybe that's why he was concerned about prevaricating when he talked about, someone asked him whether or not he took another mode of transportation. But yeah, I think we just have to be very careful about how we interpret his words. And I think walking is one of them. Yeah.
Just looking at heavy loads in water high, to me, that's a dam. And I know everybody's going to say it's not, or warm water's halt isn't a dam, but I don't mean like the Hoover Dam. What if it's a natural dam? There's a bunch of logs that have created a log jam. The water pools up and it goes through to a lower, what I mean?
That can withstand the test of time. There's your search partner, Cynthia. My God.
No, he absolutely is my search partner, because Mike is right. If you're in a canyon in this Gibbon River, I had one of my solves, the Gibbon River is running down through there, and all of a sudden, right where there's a big bend in the river, it narrows. You should have seen the log jams, the heavy loads and water high there. The water was deep there, and the log jams were all the way up the side. Mike, we got it. When can you be ready to go?
Hold on a second.
Explanation for that line. That's all.
I'm going to send you a couple links to Candy's videos where she also asked Candy to be search partners. So you're having the dime a dozen. I'm just saying. She doesn't ask me, but she has wait, we got another super chat.
USA China one.
Otherwise known as Sam. In shaded mist,
Like a pole.
all your dreams with endurance, persistence, and perhaps an occasional hand from or occurrence with fate, will you travel deep enough into the mist to find and bring home all your dreams?
What's that from, Sam? That's pretty cool.
I don't know what that is, but that is pretty cool. Okay, I want to go back to I actually want to say, Cynthia, do you have any further questions for Justin?
No, and thank you, Justin, for answering that.
Oh yeah, likewise. And I appreciate your insight on your criteria for deciding whether or not a place is exhausted. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to add to that? When you feel it's reasonable to move on to a new location?
That's so tough for me. It's sometimes, it's all based on your SSA and the algorithm. How strong is your solution to the poem? If I've been out there 150 or 175 times to, let's say, 75 different locations, probably 73 of them have sucked. I mean, so they got stronger. So when I look back in the early years, it's like, oh my God, this is some of the most stupid stuff I've ever heard of. And it was mine. But as all searchers have done, you evolve through the years. You evolve with every boots on the ground. I am so much pickier now when I go, and that just makes it that much harder to give up. So will I ever give up Sunlight Basin and all the little side canyons? Probably not.
Oh my gosh, in this last week, you were all fired up about some other things. I'm not saying you're giving up your other, but you were, oh, Cynthia, the wind blows. You think about it. I mean, I'm just saying.
So let me ask you this, maybe it'd be a good final question since we're coming up on 2 hours already. And thank you guys for hanging out for the 2 hours.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
One of you kind of put together what you thought were possible clues, and you see a blaze and you get the goosebumps, like that could be it. Have you actually found a blaze where you looked like it could actually be there? No, it wasn't there, obviously, but did you get that excitement where like that could be it?
Every single time.
Let me put it this way, a realistic blaze. In other words, you've solved what you thought were the 8 previous clues, and you're like, this could be the area. Oh, that might be it, that type thing. Are you not getting past clue 4, 5, or 6 to where you've ever gotten to a viable blaze? Just
yeah, I mean, there have been areas where I've been very excited, and I think that it might have been the end game. The blaze is a very interesting. I mean, boy, I think folks could talk for days about the blaze. It's I like the concept that it. When someone asked if you could identify the blaze ahead of time, and Forrest refused to answer that question, I think that's that's pretty enlightening. I think he felt he was going to give too much away if he answered. So if you think about and go through the thought process of, well, if he answered this, then what would it give away, and vice versa. I think that's pretty insightful. And the other piece is around the blaze and how apparently he didn't take a radial off the blaze, and he's not thinking any of the cardinal directions. And so, what does that leave in terms of the way that the blaze is facing? Is it all directions? Is it up? Is it down? Because that's pretty much all you have left. For me, I really like, just deep in my heart, I just really wish it's like the Indiana Jones concept of this beam of light coming through some rock, and it's like, there it is, it's highlighted. Yeah. But so, I'm very flexible when it comes to the blaze, so to speak. If I'm doing a more straightforward solution that's not this holistic concept, I will come to where I believe the area is, and I'll just start looking for something. And it has to be something that most folks would just overlook, just part of the scenery. But if you're looking for it, you'll recognize it, but what's really interesting to me with the blaze is that you have to get from a place where where it's accessible to some place that people don't frequent very often, and probably not over a great distance. And I'm always interested on how that transition occurs. Like,
right.
Is it as simple as just going off the trail to some place and finding a blaze in the woods? Or is there some other sort of like geography that might make it more challenging to get there, where most people just don't want to do it? Like I was mentioning
Something
earlier.
obvious to us, but not to others. But
yeah.
Right. You were mentioning too, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
So I'm going to go back to the interview I conducted with Forrest, which was for the Aussie TV show back on May 14, 2019. When Forrest said, geez, I just had it. The treasure is hidden where a person would not normally go. So, and then other times, especially just lately, he talks about if you find the blaze, you look quickly down and the treasure is going to be there at the blaze. So then that logically seems to me then the blaze is at a place where a person is not normally going to go. So that's all I know. I mean, I agree with Justin. I thought I had one there at Sulphur Lake, and then I got back there and Jonathan said, but and which you also confirmed, Mike, is that you guys believe it's going to be something much smaller, so that you don't have to spend an hour looking through under every rock that's in that. It wasn't a landslide, it was a mineral deposit. But just like Jonathan pointed out to me and you confirmed, it's got to be something smaller. You're not going to have to search for an hour.
To pinpoint a 10-inch by 10-inch box,
12-inch by 12-inch spot.
Yeah.
Well, and if he was serious when he said to me, does your solution take you to a 12-inch by 12-inch spot? To me, that means the blaze has to be pretty small.
Well, and if you combine that with the tense change in the poem, I'm pretty intrigued by this. I know probably you guys have beaten it to death, but if you've been wise and found the blaze, that's the past tense. It's like you had to do something ahead of time, almost potentially, in order to recognize the blaze. And so, what is that action? And you think about like that combined with his concern around answering the question of whether the blaze could be determined ahead of time, and it sort of tends like it is something you can identify ahead of time. And that's kind of why I like this holistic solution, in the sense that you're effectively drawing an X on the map using the poem, and then you're also using the poem, to verify that particular location, or maybe to get to it. But the blaze is the X. Like you've been wise and found it. Like you found it ahead of time on a map, and you just go there. It's very simple. So that's why I keep oscillating between this, more holistic solution and then just a straightforward step-by-step.
I mean, if the blaze is an omega, wouldn't that be something that everybody that's read The Thrill of the Chase would automatically recognize? Like if it was carved into a rock, an omega. I mean, if it's something easily recognizable by a searcher, wouldn't we all go, oh, that obviously that's it? Like,
right.
Yeah. And so another reason why I'm taking Mike with me. So yes, Mike. So my solution is the first X number of clues are down along the Forest Service Road. Then you cross the creek. Then you go up the far side of the creek to where the blaze is. So you can see that rock. You can see that rock from the creek, the other creek side during the first 4 clues.
Okay.
So you can see it ahead of time, and maybe it doesn't really stand out to you because it's like, oh crap, it's just a boulder there all by itself. No one would think about it unless you're a searcher. Then you go around, and then when you get there, then that's where he carved that little, chiseled that little omega or FF in that rock, and then right there it is. Okay, Mike, I'm coming to get you soon.
Alrighty, we'll take K-Pro too.
Oh, you can pick it up and I'll get the rights later. I'm getting the frog. Cynthia's already told me I get the frog. So you guys have your special moment, and then I'll do the PR afterwards. Here's the only thing that I am going to completely disagree and say, Justin, you're wrong. There's only one thing. So I don't know if you've heard the story of me at the beginning. I was 100 pounds heavier. I'd lost about 15 pounds, and I said I'd made it 1 mile to Forest. Can I go boots on the ground and find this treasure chest? I hadn't told him where I was going or anything else. And that's when he put out surprise words. And I can't tell you how many times somebody says, but an 80-year-old man that's Forest Fen, he can rock climb, he can scuba dive.
He didn't write the poem for himself. He wrote it for the searchers.
Exactly. So rather than thinking of Forest at 80, I would like everyone to think, could K-Pro at 85 pounds heavier have gone to your spot? And I'd only made it 1 mile, and I have to tell you, I was huffing and puffing. Now I can run a few miles. I'm a little bit better than I was, but at the time I emailed him and he said, go boots on the ground, basically with the words he put out the next day with Jenny that everybody read. If you're walking long distances, you're walking too far. And he said, go get her done. I don't think that was his exact words, but you get what I'm saying. I think that he would never put a searcher in harm's way. I think after Randy, he was definitive about that because the searcher had died. So rather than think, could Forrest get there at 80, think, could K-Pro get there in 85, which means 85 more pounds. And that, I won't say you're wrong, because this is just a different way of looking at it.
I agree with you. I think you're spot on. I was just mentioning how some folks feel that Forrest was super spry and it might be further than it is. But yeah, I mean, for years, I had my own barometer, and, you know, I actually ended up with like this tumor in my leg. And it was to the point where, I mean, I didn't know it was a tumor at the time. It was just a pain to me, but where I just couldn't walk very well. And so I was my own barometer. I'm like, well, if I can't get there, then it's, you know, I'm going too far, you know? So
yeah,
it was a good barometer for a while.
Some people have asked, one, do you take on search partners? So you, or they're out of the area, they would like you to go for them since you're out all the time. And what is your email, if so?
Oh, was that for me or Cynthia?
No,
That was
that's
for you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just for clarity, I'm kind of nervous about folks giving me their solutions. I just, you know, I don't want to end up in an unfortunate situation where, you know, for once in a million, maybe I do find it, and then people suspect I used their solutions to get to it, and then there's legal implications. Right. I hope folks understand that I'm a little reticent to accept other people's solutions on their behalf. I apologize for that.
And there's your answer, everybody.
And Cynthia likes to take on all search partners. Mike, I'm just not. That's all.
Just the logical ones. The logical people are going to figure this out.
I definitely will not partner with anyone except Mike.
There it is. You heard it, everybody. That is a binding contract in this video, which is made.
Candy, did you hear that? Candy, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the trip this summer.
If you guys are going to Sunlight Basin, you can't have a bad time. I mean, it's awesome.
Right. Yeah. Now, do you actually camp out there overnight, or can you camp out there overnight, or are you back in the car the same day, Cynthia?
Normally I go back to Cody to my hotel room that at night, and then I go back again the next day. But this is why I wanted to get the Ranger cabin, because the Ranger cabin's right there, so I don't have to drive far.
Probably the one Forrest got when he hit it. So that would be pretty cool.
Well, he knows of it. I can tell you that.
Oh, all right. All right. Okay. Anything else? Any parting words, Cynthia, for everybody? I mean, unless
Oh,
you're going,
my
Cape.
parting words are that everybody be safe. Don't do anything that's dangerous or unsafe. And good luck to everybody.
All right, Justin.
Well, likewise, I think safety is paramount. Beyond that, don't listen to anything I've said. Use your own imagination. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have clearly not found this thing. So we need some fresh thinking. Yeah.
Oh, and I love MEH's quote. What if we just want to partner up with Justin's dog? Tucker might be able to get percentages here. I don't know.
He works for treats. He won't have a hard time.
That's all. You could like rent him out. Maybe that's what Forrest meant by renting. And what if you rent out? I don't know. There's something here.
So let me ask you this, Justin. If, say, 5 or 6 years from now, nobody's found the Forrest Fenn treasure, would you move ahead with your treasure hunt that you have in your mind? Have you ever thought of doing your own, regardless of whether you find Forrest Fenn's or not?
I do plan something similar to what Forrest has done. I've been doing my own collecting. It probably pales into comparison, with what he's done, but I like the concept and I just think it's fun. So yeah, I'll probably do it either way. So the difference is going to be, the question is going to be whether or not it's going to be Forrest treasure plus all the junk that I found or just my junk.
That's awesome. Okay. We'll look forward to hearing that whenever it comes out. All right, Christy, parting words.
Thank you guys for being here and being so open. I think there's so many that we've heard. I can't say this. I can't even say a search state. I can't say any of that. And so it's always great to kind of, but here's the funny part. And I think it was Cynthia, it might've been Mike. I get them mixed up now as they're search partners. How many Justins are there out there that I remember at World Series of Fan going, you've been out how many times? And this is the first year that I've known about, and I think some others have known about, knowing that many times. So not we all know, but we know the Cynthias, we know the Dales. How many people are out there that are putting this time and commitment in? So that means you got to race for it after this coronavirus is over. Do not go out. And House Husbands and I have decided we are going to do a little debate about, no, you don't go out. He said some things last night on his show. I got a little heated and I'm sorry about that, but I strongly believe everybody stay put for a few more weeks and then we'll all be cleared to go. So safety first.
Now, wait, I want to address that because I know the people that don't live in the Rocky Mountain states don't understand what it is here. In New Mexico, yes, we have a stay-at-home preferred mandate. However, on the news, local news this weekend, it showed tons of hikers. I even drove all the way through the Jemez Mountains, Los Alamos, Santa Fe, blah, blah. Every trailhead was packed with cars. There were people tailgating in the parking lot. I mean, like a family, not with a lot of people. They actually said last night on the news in New Mexico, they encourage people to go hike the trails, even Sandia, whatever, in town. But you have to practice the social distancing. And as long as you are doing that, they are okay with you being out on the trails. New Mexico's weather is in the 70s right now, depending on the elevation of your search area. If I was searching in New Mexico, I'd friggin' be going tomorrow again and again and again. It all depends on where you're coming from, though.
Yes.
And the other thing is, I live here. I can come home at night. I don't need to take food. So if you're going into the mountains, you better take your own food because there might not be anything open. You can probably get gasoline and that's about it. But so I'm sure the people that live in Wyoming, that search Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, the same way, although they still have snow. So forget the 3 northern states because those higher elevations would definitely likely be snowy. But in New Mexico, depending on where you search, if you live here, you can go right now.
Well, the issue that I have is the people that, again, what Carter had said is if I had the right search location, I'd be traveling across the country and getting there.
I don't know
means
about
you're
that.
touching every gas area, every bathroom, every this, every that. I need 3 more weeks to get courts open, to get restaurants open, to get a life going, because if we don't collectively shut down what we call non-essential. Now, if it's down the street from you or a few miles from you or whatever, I'm not having an issue. But if we're going across the country, you are spreading. Here's a question. If you found out you had coronavirus today and you had to tell the doctor in the last 10 days where all the places you've been, would you say all of those are essential? Let's lock it down for a few weeks and then our country will be through this. And I'm doing it for selfish reasons. I have things I want to put in motion that my life can't right now. And a lot of our lives can't. I'm not talking about cabin fever. Why did China get it shut down? Because they listened to their government. We don't. We are inconvenienced. We want to hit the liquor store and the cigarette shop and get Doritos. Are those once a week we should be going out? I'm going out maybe once every few days and just to get the essentials. So I won't go on and on. I'm just saying it would help us all if we just got this behind us. So as many now, if you're seriously having mental issues, if you can't get out in the wilderness for a day. Just don't go across states and across the country to do it. That's how this spreads. So I'm off my soapbox.
All right. Well, all I'll say is I'm going to the post office tomorrow. So everybody who bought a Chaseopoly, they're packed up. They're in my car. Talk about non-essential, but to me, I got to get it out. So post office is still open. So even though we have
Coronavirus.
I got to go. I got to go do it. Somebody bought one off of eBay about 7 days ago, and they sent me a message while we were live and said, hey, did you ship this yet? And that's why I went, oh, yeah, I got to get that in the mail.
And I'm not even giving you the addresses for the marathon because that's how strongly I feel about it. Not happening, and it's free, and it's not happening. And Copper Dan, I'm sorry. No, I feel very strongly the opposite way. We can disagree. You could be wrong, Mike Kelly.
Well, I'm going to go. I mean, I'm not going to go wait in line. If there's a bunch of people, I'll go back another day. You know what I mean?
We'll get coronavirus. That's great.
Because
So I had to go to the post office because I sold something on eBay and I had to go mail it the next day.
Is it essential? That's essential.
The post office is so organized. You have to I think theirs was even more than 6 feet. I think they had tape down every 10 feet.
Right.
And the few people that were there when I was there, everyone adhered to that. They have the plastic partitions between the guys behind the counter selling you the stuff. There was no spittle that took place between me and the post office guy. I slid my money underneath. No.
And here's the thing. When we get locked down for May, Mike and Cynthia are the reason we're locked down for the month of May. If we go beyond April 30th, when Donald Trump announces it, think of Mike and think of Cynthia. Non-essential crap. That's what Chaseopoly is. That's whatever you were selling, Cynthia. No, that's not essential.
All right. I will just say this. The guy who designed the puzzle, the guy who wrote the poem, he says, let's not start the search season until June 1st. And
you
he
don't
said,
like Forrest Fenn. Fine, you people. I'm sorry. You hate Forrest Fenn, Cynthia, and Mike. I don't hate.
It's a good time to plug in my battery cable here for my laptop.
You're muted, K-Pro. But he said it for 2 reasons. He said it because of snow, and he said it because of the coronavirus. But he did say, let's not start the search season until June 1st, which to me means it's up in Wyoming. But that's just me. But I think it's good advice. I'm only going to the post office because so many people have ordered the game that I want to get them out. I don't like being backlogged. Other than that, though, I haven't gone anywhere in like the last 2 weeks. Other than the grocery store, that's about it. So
I work from home, so nothing really changed for me.
Oh, yeah, as well. Yeah. So, all right, K-Pro.
All I can say is that I will bypass Colorado because they have a high rate. I will go through Arizona, pick up Mike in Nevada, and then we'll go north.
All right. Well, at least do it when the casino's open so we can hit the craps table on the way out. We got to win some gas money for the trip out there. Okay, everybody. Thank you for joining in. I'm Cowlazars. That's K-Pro. That's Cynthia. That's Justin. We go live every Monday and Thursday nights. At least me and K-Pro do, but Cynthia and Justin.
It's not essential. It's not essential.
Thank you guys for having me on the show. Cynthia, it's an honor to even be talking with you. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for letting me be on.
Make sure
it'll be my last time.
Channel.
I wish you weren't a liar. You're not.
Christy will never let me be on again.
Oh, I sure will. Let me have my little moment of like meltdown. I'm homeschooling kids right now. I am working from a different environment. We're all getting there. Just let me have my moment. Let me have a moment. Okay.
So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to the Cowlazars channel, Forrest Fenn's Grand Adventure on Facebook. And I will say that there's another Facebook group that has a little puzzle going on. And the name of that puzzle is Treasures Galore, right?
The Facebook page is called Forest Fen Treasures Galore, and they're giving away like some stuff. Like
Well, there is a riddle that Janet Landgard and Charles Chapman, thank you to those two, they've put out. I believe it's a 10-line riddle. It's somewhere in the 4 states of the search area. Whoever comes up with the right location, they're going to be put in a drawing, but they've got all this kind of stuff they're giving away. So go check that out if anybody's interested in that. It's a good armchair puzzle that you can work on from home.
and
So,
there's a Forest Fen reference in it. So it's like Forest
yeah,
Fen.
they're all tailored to the poem. Yeah, and Forest Fen, I guess. So it's kind of cool. I haven't really sat down and try and figure it out yet. You have to get your answer in by Saturday, I believe. Saturday's the cutoff.
No, there's 13 days from yesterday is when it launched.
No, well, then maybe I have that wrong. But go to Treasures Galore and check it out for yourself. I will say that I'm going to talk K-Pro into showing a brand new Forest Fen clip on Thursday's show.
Oh, after tonight? Okay, Mr. Are those essential? I think we're going to have a little talk.
If only we had Forrest saying,
Coronavirus!
that would be pretty
Sure, you guys aren't married.
Yeah, not yet. And we'll see. So yeah, I'm going to talk her into showing something brand new. So there'll be some breaking news on Thursday. You guys come back and check us out. And thanks everybody that's ordered Chaseopoly. We appreciate it. We did that so people could have some fun at home when they're not boots on the ground. And especially now, it's kind of apropos. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will see everybody on Thursday. All right.
The clips
Thank you,
are
guys.
essential.
See you guys.